We are barreling towards what appears to be a government shutdown, depending on what the U.S. Senate does today in response to the House passed continuing resolution that funds President Trump's border wall to the tune of $5 billion. And joining us now on the line to talk about all of this and more is the one and only Sheriff David Clarke. He's the former sheriff of Milwaukee County, Wisconsin, and he's a senior advisor to America First Action PAC and Policies. Sir, thanks for joining us here today on Breitbart News Daily.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and hello to your listeners.
So, Sheriff Clarke, obviously last night the U.S. House of Representatives passed by a strong majority a continuing resolution that fully funds the government until February 8th and funds President Trump's border wall to the tune of $5 billion. Nancy Pelosi said it couldn't be done. It was done. What are your thoughts on the House passed bill last night?
Yeah, and it looks like Chuck Schumer doing his happy dance was a little premature. Look, I was a little disappointed that some very prominent President Trump supporters had jumped off the bandwagon when Ryan and McConnell had handed him a CR with no wall funding in it. He told them that he wasn't going to sign. He said this the last time they handed him that craptacular omnibus bill with all that spending with no border security funding in it. So he already gave them advance warning. Now, the people who got upset with Trump, and I'm talking about the people on our side, the conservative side, apparently don't know how our government works. The president needs Congress to act in order to get things done. He needed Congress and still needs Congress to appropriate funding for this wall. But now this thing is right where it needs to be. It's up to Mitch McConnell to strong-arm some Republicans. He has the Republican votes. He's going to need every Republican to pass a bill in the Senate now, because as you indicated, it's now in their hands, to put forth a CR with some wall funding in it. This is a long way from over, but I knew that early in the week when people started to bail on the president, talking about him caving. This president's not going to cave, but he understands he's got to work with, because that's the way our founders set this up. He got to work with the Congress to get this done.
So we actually have some audio of President Trump from yesterday talking about this. Can we play clip 1B? I want to get your response to the Sheriff Clarke afterwards. Let's play clip 1B.
The safety and security and sovereignty of the United States is the most important principle of all. If we don't stand strong for our national borders, then we cease to be a nation, and we betray our commitment to the loyal citizens of our great country. I look forward to signing a bill that fulfills our fundamental duty to the American people. It is all about, and I say this in any way they want to hear it, it's all about America first. We have to put our country first. We have to put our people first. And we have to put safety first.
Sheriff Clarke, what do you think about what President Trump was talking about there?
Very well put. And it's important when you're the President of the United States to be able to communicate in a way that people understand it. From the very beginning, from the time he announced that he was running for president, all through the campaign, and even after he was inaugurated, he's been talking about sealing that southern border security. He made it a major plank in his platform. So I thought it was very well put. See, he's approaching this thing from a policy perspective, and Schumer and Pelosi are approaching this from a political perspective. They're trying to get a political win. They're trying to deny the president from fulfilling a campaign promise. That's the politics of it. But the president's made it clear that when it comes to border security, and the wall is only one part of it, he understands those other things that he needs, but he outlined that in his State of the Union address with his 4-point plan to fix immigration. But again, he needs Congress to act. So I think it's important, like I said, though, for him to keep saying that, keep communicating it over and over and over, that narrative, because people, I think the American people, they get it. They really do. When you look at the polls, it polls in the 70 and 80% that people want this broken immigration fixed. They want this illegal immigration, people trespassing into our country and setting up residency. They want it to end. They want illegal drugs, guns, and gangs from pouring over our southern border. That's what this is about from the president's perspective. But Pelosi and Schumer want to play politics.
So now you spent many years in law enforcement as the sheriff of Milwaukee County. Can you explain for us why it's important that we have a wall along the U.S. border with Mexico? I don't think we can do this enough. Why get our law enforcement officers to keep the American people safe? Why do we need a wall? Why do we need immigration enforcement? Explain that for us.
Well, it's a number of reasons here, but some of the major ones are there's some domestic and national security issues, and that's where law enforcement comes in. And local law enforcement has to count on the Border Patrol, has to count on ICE to do their job at the federal level with their jurisdiction in order to help at the local level. Local law enforcement is dealing with an influx of criminals into the country, MS-13, they're not the only ones, but MS-13 and others who are wreaking havoc on American citizens. If we don't get the help of the Border Patrol, if we don't if we can't depend on, and they're doing a great job, by the way, with what they have. Okay, they need more resources, but they're doing a great job with what they have. But if we can't count on them, once they get into the country, once the mess gets into the country, once the fentanyl, once the heroin and the other opioids get into the country, it's too late. Once it pours over to the border and then gets into these cities, these major hubs where the stuff is distributed, it's too late. So that's why we need to count on this president, and that's why law enforcement, in part, the majority of them supported this president because of his stance on law and order. And part of the law and order is enforcing our immigration laws.
So now we know, as you mentioned a minute ago, that Chuck and Nancy, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi are playing politics with this when they should be approaching it from a policy perspective. But the fact of the matter is that there are a number of other Democrats on either side of Capitol Hill, on the House side or the Senate side. Now, none of the Democrats voted for the House bill last night. But the fact of the matter is that what's your message to those other Senate Democrats? What should they do when they're approaching this? Is there because I think there's a number of them that should vote for this House passed CR. It has nothing in it that they should be able to object to. The border wall funding is completely normal, and then the rest of it's just a continuing resolution that funds the government at current levels until February 8th. And then there's disaster relief money in it. So it's just, again, what's your message to those other Democrats in the Senate? Should they break from Schumer and side with the president and the American people on border security?
Well, sure they should, but like we've been talking about, this is in the political realm now, and the Democrats, they've shown resolve. They stick together. A couple of them broke off in the Justice Kavanaugh vote, but short of that, they usually stick together because of the politics. Their position is not in the best interest of the American people. Their position is not in the best interest of their constituents, but they don't care about that. They care about the politics. And I think that people ought to show some backbone. And I'm talking, we could sit up here and we could complain about the Democrats and their position. Keep in mind that there are Republicans. There are Republicans on the Hill who aren't for this wall, but we're going to smoke them out now. We're going to find out. The rubber's going to meet the road in the Senate. And McConnell, even if he doesn't have the votes, because I said this is a long way from over, but if he doesn't have the votes, he ought to take the vote anyway, because I and you and other conservatives and the American people need to know which GOP members in the Senate are not with this president. We need to smoke them out. We need to call them out. We need to flood their offices when we find out who they are. And McConnell should slip it out there. He doesn't have to. He won't call these people out in public, but there's nothing wrong with him getting to some conservative media outlets like Breitbart and others and say, hey, here's the Republicans we need to put the heat on because they're not playing ball with us. But as far as the Democrats, they're going to do the political thing. But that's usually what goes on in Washington. That's why our whole this whole situation, not just illegal immigration, but that's why we have 21 $21 billion in debt or whatever. It's because in Washington they play politics instead of focusing on policy.
Yeah, so now, Sheriff Clarke, and the last thing I want to ask you about here is, and we got an enormous amount of call volume into the show over the course of this week as this fight has been building. A lot of people are commenting on the website. There's tons of people out there, the army of deplorables, if you will, right? Like the people that supported President Trump in 2016, they still support him today. They want to get involved in this fight. What's your message to those people that want to do something? What do they need to do across the country right now? Who do they need to be calling? What do they need to be doing? What do they need to be saying? How does the army of deplorables out there get involved in this fight?
Well, first of all, right now, what's important, job one is getting this wall funding in this continuing resolution. So they need to flood their elected officials' offices with emails, with phone calls. That stuff matters. I'm telling you right now, I've talked to people on the Hill, and one of the things that stood out is many of them said, you know what, we rarely hear from people back home. You know what that tells me? They're not worried about what the folks at ground level, what the folks back home are thinking, and they react to public pressure. So that's the first thing they can do. The other thing they can do is stay with this president, darn it. Help him fight, help him push. Stay active, stay loud, call, write, blog, take to social media. There's a number of things that they can do to let this president know they're still with him and that they're willing to fight, and also sends a message to the other side, because the other side, the Democrats, the never-Trumpers, they're counting on people bailing on this president. So we need to make it known, and we need to be very clear to those people, we're not abandoning this guy. We're going to stay with him, and there'll be a political price to pay for you if you continue to fight this president, if you're a GOP member, to not work with him.
Well said, sir. That's a mission for the deplorables. They got a mission now from Sheriff Clarke. As always, sir, a pleasure. Thanks for joining us here on Breitbart News Daily. Where can people go to learn more about you and get involved in America First if they so choose?
Well, first of all, my own website, americasheriff.com. Everything I say, everything I write, all my interviews, I do a lot of writing, op-eds, so on and so forth. They can go to one-stop shopping at americasheriff.com. If you follow me on Twitter, you can follow it from americasheriff.com. You don't have to go around finding me on Facebook and these other sites, americasheriff.com.
All right. Well, that's Sheriff David Clarke. Sir, thank you. Always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us here on Breitbart News Daily.
My pleasure. Merry Christmas to all your listeners.